Hello everyone, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks for joining me today. I have a 4-card video using the Lawn Fawn stamp set called Really High Five. Having a lot of fun getting more use out of my stamps lately, and you all seem to really love these multiple card videos. So I'm going to jump right into the coloring. I actually forgot to show you the stamp itself, but all of the images in the stamp set are here stamped out onto my Nina 80-pound cardstock. So for the little fox, I'm using my favorite 3-color combination to color him. And if you're new to my channel, I always list the marker caps there to the top left hand of the screen. From the top, the darkest marker all the way down to the lightest marker on the bottom so that it's easy for you to follow along with the colors that I'm using. So for the fox, I just went in and marked where I wanted the darkest shadows and contrast to be, and then I brought in that darkest E18 marker. Once I have that laid down, I can go ahead and blend that out with my E09, which is my midtone, and then blend that all together with the YR18, which is my lightest. Now, there is quite a difference between the E09 and the YR18, but you can see these colors blend beautifully together, and it just gives a nice bright look to the fox against that contrast with the E18. So I really love this color combination. So once I get him colored up, I'm just going to take my colorless blender and fix up a little area on his face there where I had some of the marker get into that area. And then I'm going to work on the white patches, and I'm going to use W3, W1, and W00 for that. And I will keep that consistent with all of the bellies for the little critters. I tend to like to choose something in my card that is consistent just to kind of carry through a certain feature or theme in the card. So for some blush, I'm using some R20 and also added that to the insides of his ears there. Now for the bunny and the mouse, I'm going to use warm gray as well. I'm going to actually have the rabbit be a white bunny and the mouse be a gray. So you're going to see here as I'm using the same markers, I get two very different looks. I'm just not going to leave any space for the mouse so that he actually looks gray instead of white. So you'll see while I'm adding these darker colors to the bunny, I'm going to leave a lot of white space on his head and through his body. And I'm going to blend those colors that I lay down with the W00, and I believe I bring in my colorless blender a little bit as well. I think my W00 is getting a little bit low, and therefore it's getting a little bit harder to blend out that lightest marker with it. So you can see here with the mouse, I'm really pulling those colors through, and you get a really different look between the two little critters just by leaving some white space. And I wanted to use the darker markers on the bunny because I wanted the bunny to stand up to the darker, more saturated colors of the fox and the bear. I didn't want him to look so washed out white that he kind of disappeared on the scenes for my cards today. So once that colorless blender dries back, you'll notice that over time that bunny will appear more white. So once I get their cheeks and their ears done, I'm just going to finish up with their little bellies, and then I can move on to the bear. I did come back a second time for some of those areas. I felt like the color got pushed back a little bit too much. That's the nice thing about the Copic markers or any alcohol marker is you can go over them more than once to get that color that you wanted. So while I have the warm grays out, I'm just going to go ahead and do the tummy on the bear, and then I'm going to color him in a really nice brown color. So these are some of my favorite brown markers, and I often use these 4 colors in different combinations when I'm coloring things brown, whether it's critter or hair for little people. So for the colors, I'm using the darkest E25. My darkest midtone is the E35. The lightest midtone is the E34. And then my lightest marker that I'm using is the E31. So again, just going through with those dark markers first, blending those out as I go through the markers here. I want the bear to have more of a highlight on the left side of his face and then towards the center of his body. And you can see here these colors just blend beautifully. Now once I got him colored up, I felt like he was a little bit too light there on his body. So I will come back in with a couple of those darker markers again and just pull out those midtones a little bit more, just so that there's only a slight highlight on his body. I'm going to add some blush here again, and then I'm going to go ahead and color the balloons. So these will be the last images that I color with you. For the pink, I'm using RV19, RV09, and R83. These colors are really inspired by the Distress Oxide colors that I'm going to use for two of the backgrounds on the cards today. So I'm kind of matching them to Squeezed Lemonade, Carved Pumpkin, and Picked Raspberry. So for my oranges, I'm using YR09, YR16, and YR14. This is another great combination that blends really well together. The yellows as well, I'm going to use a 4-color blend. I'm going to color up this biggest balloon here, and I felt like because there is a little bit more surface here to color, I needed that 4th color, but you could definitely get away with only using 3. So I'm just using the darkest markers to the sides and then pulling those colors through to the middle. Now I will add some white gel pen highlights, and I actually added some pretty wide little highlights there you can see in the picture of the first card. So let's move into card number 1. I'm playing with the new Lawn Fawn Cloudy Stencil border, which I love. I think they absolutely nailed it with the shapes of these clouds. So I'm going to start with Squeezed Lemonade on the bottom, and then I will move to the Carved Pumpkin in the middle here, just rotating that stencil around. The really great thing about this stencil is that there's 4 different patterns, one on each side, but then you can go ahead and flip over your stencil and you get 4 different looks by using each of the sides on the back of the stencil as well. So for the top, I'm going to be using the Picked Raspberry. I do clean off my stencil in between each of the colors just to ensure that I'm not transferring any of that ink. So you can see here I was kind of running out of room, so I'm just moving my stencil to where I can get a few lines there to the top of the card. I probably added a little bit more orange there than I wanted to. So now I'm just going to use the leftover ink on my brushes, and I'm going to go ahead and blend off that ink where the clouds are really stark white. I really like doing this. You can leave it so the clouds are really white, but I love that soft feeling that the blending with the leftover ink gives to that white spot on the cloud. So now that I have my background done, I'm going to go ahead and adhere this. This is called a skinny rectangle die. This is from Heffydoodle, and I just cut this out of some dark pink cardstock that I had in my stash, and I'm going to center that in the middle of my panel here. Now you could definitely create this card without that, but I just like the look that that gives. It kind of frames in my critters nicely. So now I'm going to go ahead and work on the sentiment. For this card, I'm using Flying By to Say, Have an Uplifting Day. So there's some really great sentiments in this stamp set that makes it very versatile. There's birthday, but there's also sentiments that say you're awesome, and then there's this one, Have an Uplifting Day. So it's really great because you can send these cards to anyone at any time in the year just to cheer them up. So for this card, I'm going to use 3 of the critters, the rabbit, the bear, and the fox. And I'm just going to add the balloons here into their hands. And if you notice, I have the color of the balloons coordinating with the color of the background that I made. So I'm going to have the fox, who's closest to the bottom, with the yellow, the bear, who's in the middle, with the orange, and then the little bunny up top with the pink balloon. So there are 3 different strings for the balloons in this stamp set, which I think is really fun. It gives them all a different look. So I'm going to use each of the 3 different strings here. For the bunny, I'm using the straight one. And so he's just kind of floating at the top there. I guess maybe as the littlest, lightest one, he is floating faster than the other. For the little bear, I'm using this one with the little curly tail. He is just so cute with the little smile on his face there. I did play around with placement a little bit. I wanted the critters to fill out the card as much as possible. And I did find it easiest to add the balloon to the balloon string first, and then go ahead and add the balloon string to the hands of my critters. And once I get those into place, then I can go ahead and adhere the entire image. You can see here on this one, I didn't quite get enough glue, so I did drop it there, but luckily none of the glue transferred to the card panel. So for all of the card panels, for the ink blending, I'm using Bristol Smooth cardstock. That is my cardstock of choice when I'm doing blended backgrounds. It really makes a huge difference, the type of paper that you use when you're blending. You can definitely blend on regular cardstock. You'll just have to work at it a little bit, which isn't a bad thing. So just use what you have, but if you're having trouble and you're wondering why, the Bristol Smooth cardstock is wonderful for blending, and I will have that linked down below, as well as all of the other products that I'm using in the video today, in case you want to take a closer look at anything. So I'm just finishing up with this last little critter here, using my art glitter glue. I have fallen in love with this glue over the last several months, and I pretty much use it exclusively. So now that I have all of the critters down, I can go ahead and work on some final touches here. So there's this little heart stamp in the stamp set, and I brought the Distress Oxide inks back out, and I'm going to stamp a few of those hearts in the coordinating colors on the clouds. I just thought that that added some fun extra detail to the card to fill out all of that quote-unquote white space from the clouds. Now the yellow one is a little bit hard to see, but in person you can see them. As a final touch here, I'm just going to use my Nuvo shimmer pen to add some glitter and glam to the balloons, and that will finish up card number 1. So we'll give you a quick look here at this card, and then we can move on to card number 2, which I think is actually my favorite out of all 4 cards today. So for this, I'm going to do some ink blending. I'm only using 2 colors. And as you can see, the picked raspberry and the squeezed lemonade will make an orange color once they are blended together. So I just went ahead, did the squeezed lemonade to about 2/3 of that card panel, and then the picked raspberry to the top, and then blended those together. So for this card, I'm going to use this cloudy border die. This one happens to be from heffydoodle, but I believe Lawn Fawn makes a similar one as well as other companies. I just wanted to frame the bottom of the card with the clouds, and I will bring in some other clouds here once I get my 2 little critters on here and my balloons. So you could definitely make this card as well with a more neutral background if you're not into the bright pops of colors. You could do blues, which would also be really pretty for a sky. And for the next 2 cards, I will have the sky blended with some blue Distress Oxides with the cloudy stencil border. So I wanted to have the little bear here holding on to the balloons. I'm going to use 3 balloons, and then I'm going to have the little fox kind of holding on to his foot like they are floating away with these little balloons in their hands. So again, I just put down that pink one. That's the balloon that I want to the back, so I found that easiest to put down first, and I did leave the tip of that balloon overhanging the top of the card panel. I will trim that off, but I just like the look that it gives, making it look like they're kind of beginning to float away off the card. So I found it easiest to add each balloon and then add the strings and have them connect to each other near the bear's little hands. Once I have those all in place, then I will go ahead and adhere down our little bear here. So just making sure that those all connect. And here's where I can go ahead and adhere down the little bear holding the yellow balloon. And I just curled up the balloon string there so it's kind of under his arm. I thought that looked really cute. And like he's just holding on for dear life there. And then I'm going to go ahead and adhere down my little fox. So once I get him in place, I can go ahead and trim off that top piece of the balloon. And then I can add these cute little party hats to the critters. These come in the stamp set as well. And later on, I'll be using some of the birthday presents that are in that stamp set. So here's where I'm going to stamp out the sentiment. It says flying by to say happy birthday. Now that happy birthday sentiment is one stamp that is on together horizontally. I did cut that in half so that they could layer on top of each other. So here's where I'm bringing in the clouds. I love how the stark white from both these die cut clouds and the one that I used on the bottom really stand out against those three vibrant colors that I chose for these cards. These clouds are the Swirly cloud dies from heffydoodle. You can use any clouds that you have. I find that I use these all the time. There are 3 different sizes, a small, medium, and large. And I love the look of having those different sizes when I'm creating a scene card. So find some cloud dies that you love, and I really feel like they are a staple for scene making if that's what you like to do. So I have everything on. I'm just going to add some final touches here with my Nuvo shimmer pen to the bellies of the critters and the balloons. And here's a close-up look at this card. So moving on to card number 3, we're going to go for less color here. I think these cards, the next 2 anyways, make really great gender neutral cards. So I've gone ahead and cut out this landscape border. Again, the dies that I'm using here today in this card are also from heffydoodle. And the little grassy borders that they have also match the different elevations or different patterns of the landscape borders. So I love that. So you can see here I layered on a piece of grass with some green cardstock. The paper that I'm using is from Doodlebug. It's the Hoppy Easter, and it has these little grass patches all over it. I am trying to use up my pattern paper and still had this out kind of in my craft area where I could see it and thought this was perfect and made a really easy bottom part for this card. So I'm going to have 2 of the little critters here jumping on the trampoline. I just colored up the trampoline with my C5 markers. Those are the cool grays. I did pop up the trampoline and the 2 little critters on some foam tape. Now I use the Burtec foam tape, which I get off of Amazon, and I will link that below if you're looking for a really affordable foam tape that the release paper comes off really easily. So it is quickly becoming one of my favorites for adhesives as well. So I have gone ahead and laid out 3 of the clouds here that I cut out of white cardstock, but I wanted to go ahead and stamp the sentiment before I went any further. And for this sentiment, I'm using Jumping Up to Say, You're Awesome. So this is a really great gender neutral card that can be sent at any time, and I think it would just make someone smile. Once I have the sentiment stamped, I'm going to go ahead and adhere those clouds down. I haven't taken them out of my Misty yet because I'm going to add a few words here to 2 of the clouds. I thought these were really cute and just added something a little different to the card and filled up a lot of that white space from the top of the card, that top 2/3 where I have the sky and the clouds. So just using my Versafine Clair Nocturne ink, and there's card number 3 complete. So we can move on to the final card. This is going to be another birthday card, very clean and simple, easy to recreate. I just cut out this hillside with some green cardstock. Now this die is from the Lawn Fawn palm tree border die set, and I find that I use this one the most out of all of the dies that come in that little set. I love how it creates that top rounded part of the hill. So for this one, I'm playing on the sentiment high 5. So I'm going to have my little fox and my bear jumping up here to give each other a high 5. I wanted the bear to be a little bit taller than the fox just for some visual interest. He's got a pretty big spring in his step there and made a really big jump. So for the fox, I'm having a present in his hand, and then I will add a party hat to both of my little critters here once I get them adhered down to the card panel. Again, bringing in those cloudy dies, you can see in this video just how much I use them for scenes. If you don't have the cloudy dies, you could go ahead and just cut out your own clouds, or you could leave them off and just have the blended background with the stencil, or you can just go ahead and blend some blue ink that you have to create the sky if you don't have a stencil either. So once I get the clouds in place here, I will go ahead and work on the sentiment. So I will bring my Misty back out for that. I'm just going to trim off those pieces of the clouds there that are overhanging the card. I really like to do this because it gives the illusion of motion in a card. So I'm going to center the sentiment on the little hill here, and I'm going to stamp out high 5, it's your birthday. So I think this card in the end would be really great for a masculine card as well. I know I often have more trouble making masculine type cards, but really this is a card that could be sent to anyone. So to finish off the little scene here, I'm going to add 3 of the birthday presents close to the sentiment. I thought that just drew your eye in to the sentiment itself. I'm going to stamp this little stamp here that has 2 lines to make it look like they are in fact in the air, and that will be it for the 4th and final card. So I'm going to slow this down and show you the 4 cards. I did add some things to the cards here, so you can see on the second card I added some sequins. For a few of them I did add the 3 little dots after jumping up to say, and then for our little critters here on the trampoline I added those 2 little lines like I did for the 4th card. So that's it for the really high 5 stamp set from Lawn Fawn. Here's a couple more Lawn Fawn videos for you to watch until I'm back with another one. Thanks for joining me everyone today. Have a fantastic day and I will see you soon. Bye!